Hello there, and welcome to Sweet Child of Time. I'm your host, Steve Barnes, and we are in the midst of recapping Dark. Today we're doing episode 3, which is called Past and Present. And I am here with my co-host, Lindsay Dunn. Ahoy there, Lindsay.
Ahoy, Steve.
I hope there's, at some point in this show, Dark, that there's boats that will make this ahoy there worthy. I know there's a lake at one point, but are there any boats? I don't remember.
I don't think there are any boats. It's one of the connections we don't have between 1899 and Dark. No boats unless there's a toy boat at some point, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I'm going to stick with it anyway. I don't care. So, man,
can't stop now.
Yeah. This past and present episode takes us back into the past, 1986. What are your general thoughts about this episode?
This episode is very interesting after the last episode. Mm-hmm. You know, the first episode is the opener, right? The orientation to the world of Dark. So we're in meeting all the characters. And in the second episode, I told you how I felt like that one was really leaning into the murder mystery. It was more on the investigation and who might do what.
Yeah.
And then this is the first episode that gets into the time. And so we begin to explore more the relationships between the present world and the past world and how those two things might inform each other.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's sort of like discovering your Christmas present and getting to open it and explore it for the first time. So there's a lot to take in. There's a lot of different things to try to pay attention to at the same time. And, you know, it's just a very intriguing episode in general because we're meeting some characters for the first time. We're meeting some characters for the second time in a different form than we've met them. They were adults, now they're kids, or they were old men and now they're younger men. And so it's just, we're beginning to, it's like going from 2D to 3D.
I'm a sucker for it. I love it when you have like two actors playing like the same character, a younger and an older version. So I'm a real sucker for this. I don't know if you call it a trick or not, but I really like it a lot. And it's they're doing the same thing in Yellow Jackets. They did the same thing in House of the Dragon. So like in some of my, 3 of my top shows right there, you have it happening. And that's what I found most neat about it. It was a little confusing trying to like piece things together. Like when you're hearing a last name, you're like, oh, whose last name was that? Somebody who's rewatching this for the 3rd time, 4th time, that kind of stuff is going to come easier. But to like the first time watcher or even to a second time watcher like myself, trying to make these connections was difficult. And I guess one example I'll give right off the bat is Burnt, the dude who was running the power plant right now. I was I was in my head, like frantically trying to figure out who he was, like whose dad he was, like what his relationship to the town was. Then when I saw, like in your recap, his last name's Doppler, I'm like, bingo, it's Charlotte's granddad or whatever, That is correct, right? He is Charlotte's granddad?
Not really. So remember that Charlotte, her last name is Doppler, but it's because she's married to Peter Doppler.
Oh, so it's Peter's dad or granddad or whatever.
Bernd is Helg's father.
Right.
And Helg is Peter's father.
Okay, gotcha.
So Bernd is Peter's grandfather. Yeah. Sorry, I made that more complicated than it needed to be.
Well, see, I was thinking it was from the Charlotte angle, though. So, yeah, see, these kind of things I'm still learning. So, I love time jumps. I love intricate character design like this.
Yeah. Well, speaking to the, just to speak to the first time watcher, if you're watching this, you're not alone. So don't feel like you're not intelligent enough to enjoy this show because we were all there with you. Steve's on a second viewing and he had no idea, he just said he had no idea who that character was. I'm on my 5th viewing and I'm still finding new things that I didn't see the first time because because now that my brain has absorbed the big details, I'm beginning to absorb the little details.
Yeah.
And this, I'll put in a plug in for my recaps. If you're having trouble, go to those written recaps, because I solve many mysteries, even though I still find corrections, and people write in and they correct it for me and tell me, like, you had this detail wrong, and I found a spelling error in my thing. So it's like, there are mistakes in here, but I'm here doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you.
I love the written recaps. Everybody knows by now they're one of my stories, and I'm going to tell everybody a secret tip. This is a life pro tip for you. What you do is, like, if you're at work and you can't listen to podcasts and you can't, like, watch anything on YouTube, you can't watch any, like, recap YouTubes like Lindsay's, all you got to do is just go to her website, which is probably not blocked, because I work in a corporate center and her website is not blocked because it's not like any kind of site that's dangerous. So you go to the recap you want to look at, which in this case is, episode 1.3, past and present. Control, and then you select all on the page. Then you open up a blank email it to yourself, and then you're going to paste plain text on that page, email it to yourself, and bingo, you've got your recap in an email form. Anybody walks by your desk, it looks like you're studying an email, and you're really looking at the dark recap.
This is an elaborate scheme, Steve. But thank you for that pro tip.
I've never done it myself. I've only thought about it. I've never done it with any of my TV shows I watch.
Mm-hmm. And it's a very detailed recap, so they'll think you're reading a detailed email. And
that's right. My face will be making all these different, contortions, like, whoa, huh? Mm-hmm. Like, wow, he's really solving our company's problems right now. But Lindsay, I don't have any housekeeping this week. I'm ready to get right into the recap if you are.
It sounds good. So this recap opens with a commercial.
Oh, great.
For Raider candy bars, which we talked about in an earlier episode, but that is Mad's favorite candy, and she found the wrapper in at the grave in 2019. She tells Ulrich that. And so it just opens with this commercial, and in the commercial we pull back, and we're inside the Nielsen house where the teenage Ulrich lives. So we're opening in that 1986 timeline, that the scene, the last episode we were left in 1986. Now right. They just open in 1986.
Right, we're picking right up where we left off. Like, Mikkel is, like, at the front door, opening the door right now, and this commercial is playing as he's doing so.
And the door is open. Ulrich, we noticed, didn't close the door. Mm-hmm. We found out why later, but for now the door is just open, so he looks like just a very irresponsible teenager that walked down, just left the door open.
But he's not. He's listening to his mom.
Yeah. So Mikkel enters the house and begins walking around this space that is both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. And he calls Mama, and, there's a person on the couch wearing this sky blue bathrobe, and she wakes, or she doesn't not sleep, but she wakes up or lifts up and says Mads, and she's very confused. Maybe she was sleeping, dozing, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And here's Mikkel, who might resemble Mads a great deal with probably the dark hair and the skin, and the paler skin. And she comes over to him, and she's trying to, she's kind of pawing at him. I don't know what you can even say, what she's doing. She's just
That's exactly it, yeah.
touching his face and trying to figure out, who are you? Like you were grabbing a doll and you were, like, investigating it for the first time.
Yeah.
And, she's just calling, like, do you know where Mads is?
Sure.
Because she's missing her son, and Mikkel is terrified of what she's doing. And she's kind of pulling on him, and he ends up running away.
Yeah, no doubt.
So
only couple of things I had taken from this is like, first off, does she remember this encounter? Like, that's very important to me. Like, if we were to ask Jana in 2019, do you remember the time, like, of course you remember when Mads was first missing. Do you remember a strange kid walking in your living room randomly and scaring you? And I'm thinking she probably would remember that, I guess. Because it happened.
Well,
we just saw it happened.
Yeah, and that's her grandson.
She doesn't recognize him as her grandson, though, of course. But I mean,
Well, I know, but I'm
he
saying
grows up.
if this is, what I'm saying is this is 1986 Jana, right? Ulrich's mom. And so in 2019, Mikkel is the child of Ulrich.
Right.
So Jana knows him as her grandson. So if this event happens in 1986, and 33 years, she realizes my grandson looks a lot like that kid, so I'm just agreeing with you that, does she, like you said, does she remember it?
Right.
She doesn't know it's her grandson then, but in 2019.
And your brain does things like to faces, like especially after 33 years. Like if you haven't seen somebody for 30 years, like you kind of forget what their face looks like all the complete structure of it. So it wouldn't be unusual for her not, as Mikkel grows up, once he hits that certain age and gets that certain hairstyle and maybe buys that certain jacket, by that time she might have not forgotten that incident, but just hadn't put two and two together, because a lot of things happen in our lives and we don't always put all the connections together. That was just a random off. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw that. It's like, I wonder if she remembers that, like in 2019, like some weird kid walking in, and she didn't realize at the time and still doesn't realize it was like Mikkel the whole time.
Yeah. But it's a tough scene, but also it's a tough scene to watch from his perspective. But the other thing I think about is, she's an adult woman and he's a kid.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you? This just illustrates what a bad place she's in. Almost like how Ulrich was with Jürgen, and like, oh, you're selling the kids dope. I mean, here's a kid that looks really scared in your living room. As shocked as you might be to see this strange kid, you might wonder, are they okay? Can I help call somebody for you? And he just kind of runs off, and she doesn't even attempt to go after him or care for him. Her only focus is on Mads and the fact that it's not Mads and how disappointed she is by that.
Yeah, I'm sure like after that happened, she just went right back to the couch and just laid there and like cried and missing Mads. He's obviously in shock because I thought based on the last episode that he immediately recognized Ulrich as his dad, and he immediately recognized Katarina when he looked at her. I thought that he had put it all together at that moment, but obviously he's in shock because he's still questioning everything, and he's still through this whole episode looking for answers. So he hasn't put it together yet, obviously. I guess the only other thing I wanted to ask you is Raiders is a real, and this is just beside the point, but I want to know, is this a real commercial or did they shoot this commercial for the show?
That's a good point. I believe it's a real commercial.
I was thinking it was too, but I wasn't sure because I know that they have, there's a book we're going to see later on in this episode, a book that does not actually exist in public libraries. So I wasn't sure if like this was all made up too, just to serve the plot. But that. Yeah.
I think, when it comes to the book, that's one thing, but they've shown like music videos, like they haven't created any fake music videos and commercials. Correct. So I think that would be quite an effort to put.
I didn't put. She's out there watching MTV. Okay, I get it. All right.
I do think it's worth noting. One last thing I want to point out about this scene is that Mikkel is in really bad shape, and I'm not sure that was as apparent in the last episode, is right. How beat up he is. His face has wounds in it and almost like burn marks or incineration marks, or it could just be from being in the cave and being dirty. But his appearance is is pretty pitiful.
Yeah, I think somebody mentions that he needs his stitches on one of those spots on his cheek. I think the cop says that. Yeah, he's not looking great. Yeah, that's all I got for that scene. If we want to.
Yeah. So we're now in the hospital, and we watch this nurse just stride down the hall, all in white. But luckily, this nurse is nothing like Nurse Ratched.
Okay.
And we find out who she is because one of her coworkers asks her to cover the night shift because she has to take Benny to soccer. I did end up adding that to the recap because we have not met Benny yet, but that is a character we're going to meet later in the show. So I was very excited. This was one of my finds this episode. I was like, oh, she mentioned Benny, but Benny is a character we're going to meet eventually. Very intriguing character. So So the first woman who was strutting to the hall has nobody waiting at home for her. So that leaves her more free to cover shifts.
Yep.
And we see that the nurse's name tag says Inez Conwald, who is the woman reading the note left by Michael.
Jonas's granny.
Yeah.
That hasn't come to visit Jonas for a few months, we hear from Hannah. So, but right now she's looking tight, looking good, helping people out. Enos is my, I'm not going to, no spoilers for who my favorite and least favorites are. So I don't really have any other notes for this episode. I mean, for this scene, other than, she seems cool. And not only did she help her coworker cover a shift, but she also made a little joke about it to be like, it's all good. See, I'm laughing. So, cool lady.
Yeah, I thought that was, I was thinking, again, this is a great example of there's not a lot of dialogue, but I think we learned some things about Inez in this scene, that she's probably a very calm, cool, and collected person. Yeah. She can move with the tides, and she also can keep secrets. She's her coworker. She's probably a very trusted colleague in her job.
Yep.
So then there's a girl riding a bike through town, and the girl stops and notices a dead bird on the ground. So we've talked a lot about dead birds already.
Here we go with another one.
And she picks it up. Yeah, so she picks it up and puts it in the satchel. And that's really all that happened in this scene. But I did go ahead and share that based on what we learned later, the girl is Charlotte Doppler. Well, she was not Charlotte Doppler at the time. She's whatever her last name is. But this is Charlotte. And in the other world in 2019, she is there when the dead birds all drop, and here she is with her dead birds.
Yeah, she was a smart detective in 2019, and we're seeing how she, I guess, became a smart detective. This is a smart move. 80% of the people watching this were probably like, ooh, gross, you picked up a dead bird. The other 20% were like, oh, that's a really neat way to have a model to be able to draw, because if you don't, you can't force a bird to sit still. So she's kind of using this bird as a model for her to draw. And I don't know, it's a smart idea. It's a really thinking outside the box kind of way of thinking.
It is a smart, cool outside the box, although you might wonder how long that bird stayed in the freezer before anybody found it. But I think the other thing, the other possibility that could come out of this scene is that, Charlotte seems really interested in dead animals. And I think, Jeffrey Dahmer was as well. So it's we could come away with this believing this makes her look suspicious, especially considering her very stoic affect as she's doing this. There's not, she's not very emotional about it. So it could mean, is Charlotte some kind of serial killer in the making here that she's...
I took it as differently. When she pulled out that art book and started drawing, and she was such a good artist, that completely like flipped my mind around to think like the other 20% of people that were like, oh, this is what her plan was to have a model to draw. And that's a reasonable way to do it. Kind of a weird way. People are going to think she's a weird girl, of course. But I don't know. I mean, us who watch this show are attracted to weird things. So,
Oh, Steve, you sweet child.
I guess so. I don't know what you're talking about, but I guess I am.
Steve's going, isn't it great that she makes up dead animals and sticks them in the freezer? But no, I mean,
it's not great to keep them in the freezer, but it is a reasonable way to keep your model in pristine shape, is to keep it at a temperature where it's frozen.
Right,
or maybe
right.
she's afraid to let go of things. I noticed we haven't even gotten there yet, but
Yeah.
we'll keep going.
She has
Let's
an
keep
eye
going.
for detail. Right.
Yeah.
So we got to another house, and a policeman is listening to the news. It's November 5th, 1986, and the police have no leads about Mads Nielsen's disappearance. And listening to this is Egon Tiedemann, who's the grandfather of Regina, and he happens to be the head of police in Winden. So, that's what Ulrich's job was. But in 1986, it's Egon. And he's kind of listening to this news report. It's like listening to your failures being reported back to you on the radio.
Yep, I guess so. I didn't think about it that way. He's kind of a mess, right? He looks like a mess. Kind of has that sunken face, sunken posture, disheveled hair, clothes ill-fitting. Just kind of looks like a mess in general. And I noticed his last name was Tiedemann, so obviously he's related to the other Tiedemans that are affiliated with the power plant. The Tiedemans also own the hotel in 2019, and they beget Bartosz at some point, the Tiedemans as well. I just wanted to clarify those things. Those are the only notes I have for this scene too, is like how much of a mess he appears. He looks like a Archie Bunker kind of drunk type, and I guess he was cast as this for a reason, to show us that he's kind of like just kind of a mess.
Yeah, eventually when he goes out on the job, he is wearing a very official looking coat,
more or less.
But I think, but so I don't know. I thought the jacket. Here we go with the jacket again. I thought that jacket was impressive and looked very official, and he had the hat. And I was like, when he went on the job, he seemed a lot, until he moves on to going to Ulrich's house and talking to him. Up until that point, when he's there investigating, I felt like he was doing a thorough job. So but when he's there by himself in the office, kind of mulling over his failures, he definitely doesn't look good.
Correct.
But he receives a phone call and says that he's going to be right there. So somebody's called him for a job of some kind.
That's right. And we catch up with him later.
Right.
Actually, pretty soon, but I guess we'll move on to some new characters, or at least a new adult character.
So now we see Claudia Tiedemann, which wasn't said, but I'm telling you, it's Claudia Tiedemann. We hear her name spoken out loud soon enough. And she is taking a teenager named Regina to school. So this is Regina Tiedemann, the hotel owner in 2019. So she's taking her to school, and Claudia is getting ready to start her first day as being boss, and she's got her bright red lipstick, she's got red shirt on, and she's kind of practicing her speech that she's going to give. And she's also berating Regina about her appearance and telling her how ratty her hair looks. And this is every daughter's worst nightmare, to have mom talking to you like this. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Yuck talking to Ling Yi in 1899.
I can see that.
Different topics, but it's still like, what a disappointment you are, is kind of the overall
Well, I guess by
overall vein.
comparison, I mean, if you compare the mother's appearance to the daughter's appearance, it's night and day. This is a very different Regina than I would have pictured her as a teenager. I would not have pictured her as like a messy type airhead. I would picture her as more like her mom, basically. I wrote down here that 1986 Claudia really reminds me of 2019 Regina. Their demeanors, or at least what I know of Claudia so far, it seems like she has a real, tough, rigid exterior. Doesn't seem to be as crazy as Regina is at this point, but maybe time will tell.
Right. This is a very teenager parent interaction, though, with the Tears for Fears playing in the background and the teenagers in the backseat rolling her eyes, and mom is giving you a lecture in the front seat. It was pretty familiar, and it was kind of nice that way. It was like, this seems so normal, right? It's like every coming of age story we've ever seen.
Absolutely. And they're playing that Shout by Tears for Fears, and it rolls us right into the next scene. I love the way it does that. Like they're listening to it quietly in the car, and then when they enter, it becomes like our background music for the high school, and it's really fitting for the scene. They picked a good song for this.
Yeah, this scene is great when we get back to the high school. I think it's a nice little slow motion. Feet of the students arriving, and everybody's dressed in this 1980s attire, and I saw Adidas sneakers, and
it doesn't look corny or stupid. It looks like normal. It looks like normal 1986, not overdone or funny. It's it looks legit of its time.
There's nobody with Jane Fonda,
Right.
But Mickles also got this. He stands out for many reasons. Number one is he's dirty, and we already said that. He's wearing this skeleton outfit.
Yeah.
That's like a costume from Karate Kid. So, I mean, I was like, of course, I think karate PJs are cool, but I don't know. I don't know if that was cool in Germany. And he's also got this contemporary, his hairstyle is in sort of this page boy cut. I don't think that's how boys were wearing their hair back then. They might have been wearing mullets.
Skater boys wore their hairs like that in the 80s. Absolutely.
But I don't think we see anybody else with a haircut like him.
Nah, you're right about that. He's one of a kind. He's also young. He's also younger than everybody else too. We got to take that into consideration.
That's true.
He's not a high school student. He's obviously a middle school student at best.
Yeah. And he's sort of pushing his way into the school because he feels maybe he can find his mom.
Right. She works
she's
there.
The principal of the school.
Right. I mean, it's logical.
But we see the posters that Mads is missing that look an awful lot like those posters of Eric in 2019. So there's a lot of mirroring, and we've already mentioned so many things, but the mirroring being the posters in the two worlds and the Radar candy bar in the two worlds. And because I've said several times now, back in 2019 this happened, in 1986 this happened. That happens really throughout this episode and throughout the show. Things have a tendency to repeat themselves.
Yep. And today is November 5th, 86. And so Mickle came from November 4th, 2019. So it was obviously the night before that. Correct? It was the night before that he arrived at those caves and then wandered up to his house that morning, right?
Well, that's a good point. What was the date? Yes, I'm like, what was the exact date? I
went back to the notes, and it was our first episode occurred on November 4th. That's what it said at the beginning of the episode. So now it's November 5th.
That's interesting, because I always assumed in my head that he actually was stuck in the cave for a few days, but I guess not. So that's good to know.
Not. I don't know.
It's the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So inside the school, we have some teenage girls talking, and they're talking about this song
Yep.
called well, we don't find out the name of the song. It's called Genie, and by Falco, and the girl is saying, "Do you know what the song is about? It's great, and it's about this man who kidnaps a girl and takes her to the forest to kill her because of her red lipstick."
Yeah, the red lipstick.
Yeah,
and I mean they're right. This song is creepy. It was banned. Or, I guess in some places it was. It became like an import. And Falco, I mentioned him like back in episode 1 when I was just mentioning like, random like German bands that were cool in this point of time. Falco was one of them. He's the Rock Me Amadeus guy. He's the Der Kommissar guy. And yeah, it's cool that they're trading Falco tapes in the hall here. I like that.
Right. And so the other girl is Hannah, is listening in on this, and she's a little bit younger than Katerina, and we may not have known that before, but she's kind of the appearance you get is that she's slightly younger and trying to hang out with the cool girls. Yeah,
like she's a freshman and hanging out with juniors or something like that.
Yeah. She likes Nino D'Angelo way better than Falco. So
that means she's cool,
Yeah, this is a instance where it was really, I found this typo here because I had Nina D'Angelo, and so I was gonna look up who is that? Nina D'Angelo is like a drag queen that's around now, and Nino D'Angelo is a German. Actually an Italian entertainer from the 1980s. So like one letter makes a big difference.
It can, yep.
And then Mikkel comes up to them and is looking for his mom. And the girls are kind of making fun of him. Katerina is basically, she bullies him.
That's like his mom, right? She should have been like, It's me, Mikkel, hello.
Yeah.
No, I know.
She remembers seeing him at Ulrich's house.
Yes.
And then Hannah gets interested. Oh, you were at Ulrich's house?
Oh, that's correct. That's right.
Yeah, all of a sudden she's like, oh, you knew? All of a sudden she perks up when she hears Ulrich's name immediately. And he's just, Mikkel, the actor here is so good. He's just so adorable and sad. And we find out that Katerina is just a huge bully because she pushes him, she makes fun of him, and is not helpful at all. So, yeah,
like I think the shove is what like sold it for me. Like if they had just walked off, like, oh, we're late for class, we got to go, they would have been like just thoughtless girls. But like the way she shoved him, I think that that showed the bulliness. She wanted to slap him in the head the way the Nielsen's do, but I guess she restrained herself.
That might have even been comforting to him. Oh, they never recognized this.
Stockholm syndrome.
Anything else you want to say about this interaction here?
I do not. Do you?
No, I do think it's a really interesting scene though at the school, and meeting your mom. I remember reading a book. You were talking last week about imagining what it would be like to go to the past, and I have a book where I don't remember the name of it, but I read where a girl goes back to the past and meets her mom, and they become friends, and it's her chance to kind of see that my mom is actually a person and she was once like me.
Okay.
Like that didn't happen here. This isn't like mom was once a kid like you too. It was like mom was once a bully and she ate kids like you for breakfast. So we're now at the power plant and Claudia arrives for her first day as the boss. She gets on her high heels.
Yep.
And she's got that lipstick red shirt on. And back to the lipstick again. Lipstick, lipstick, and okay. So she's greeted at the gate by an overly friendly man who turns out to be Helg Doppler, who was the man in episode 1 who was saying it's happening, it's going to happen again, it's going to happen again. That guy. That is Helga, the man here.
He doesn't seem crazy right here. He just seems normal right here. I mean, he seems kind of over-eager, but he seems normal, like he's not going to repeat himself over and over again and run through the streets. It seems like this guy is normal, but he's like, I don't understand their relationship, but yeah, he gives her a gift, which is odd.
He gives her a gift, and he's kind of tripping all over himself.
Yeah.
To talk to her. It's maybe you think maybe he has a slight crush on her, or he seems to. He's like, he congratulates her for her new role, and she's like nice to him. She's polite, but she's obviously ready to get around him. And even after she walks off, he's like, Claudia, we're all rooting for you.
That
so
was
it's just
pathetic. That was a really pathetic move, but yeah, she was really nice to him. I mean, she gave him like a genuine smile, but you could tell she was, ready to get on with her first day and get her boss thing going. Yeah. But he was busy too, though. He had a little job he was doing.
Yeah. What was the job, Steve?
It looked like he was cleaning up, in my opinion, Ulrich's mess. That's my guess. Somebody had graffitied "No Future" on the street there in like white paint. And I remember seeing that same thing on the back of Ulrich's leather jacket. And I saw the same thing in Ulrich's room, that "No Future" slogan or logo or, saying from the Sex Pistols song, obviously. Mm-hmm. And right there in front of the power plant, it's obviously a political statement. I would say.
Right. Now, Helg also, we find out later he's the son of Bernd, who's the head of the company. So why is he out front cleaning off graffiti?
I think he's in trouble. I think this is his punishment.
This is like detention?
I don't know. Like, he should be like, maybe taking over the power plant from his dad. I mean, and nepotism, I know that's not a great thing. I know we're rooting for Claudia here. But yeah, it makes you wonder, why is the president's son the janitor?
The parents like to pass off their inheritance towards their progeny. But in this case, Helg is not, for whatever reason, he is not leadership material. Nah. And this is a smart way for them to show that without telling us. He's out front cleaning up graffiti. This is something Bernd would never do, and it's something Alexander definitely would never do. Is it now, Steve? No. He would said, "You're going out there in a heartbeat."
And plus, I mean, he wants to hand over the power plant to somebody who's like strong with leadership skills, and that's more Claudia. Helgi is more the type of person who's going to, smile and give you a present on your first day and try to be your friend. And I don't think he's tough leadership material that the plant needs right now. Maybe that's how his dad is seeing it.
Yeah, the thing with Regina, and we see this throughout, but she doesn't have time for nonsense, really. Mm-hmm. So, it's nice that you said hi to me, Helga, but now please let me get on to my important meeting. She's very business oriented. That's
right. I'm going to be business oriented right now. If we're done with this scene, I need to take a break. Did you have anything else for this scene, though?
Nope.
Alrighty. Break time. We'll be right back. We are back, and the last people we were talking about were up there at the power plant. Is that correct? We were talking about Claudia.
Right. We were at the power plant, Claudia, Helg. Yeah. So now we are on the field with Egon Tiedemann, who's talking to a farmer named Herman Albers. This is Katerina's father. Just so you know.
Who is Katerina's father?
Herman Albers.
Really?
The farmer.
I wish I'd known that before. Okay. Well, I'm going to... Good call. Thank you very much. Continue.
The only reason I know that... And I remembered he was somebody... But there's this thing called the Dark Wiki. I used the Dark Wiki to look it up. And it's Herman Albers is his name, and it's Katerina's father.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah. So he filed this damage report after he found 33 of his sheep dead that morning. and there's really no known cause. And Egon's doing his best to narrow down what the most typical cause is, and the farmer ends up quoting a scripture from Mark 13:33. Be on guard, be alert. You do not know when that time will come. And excuse me. Egon's really surprised because he really didn't know that Herman Albers was so religious.
Right.
But Herman reports that there is a new priest in town. A new priest in town that is a good man. Or seems to be a good man. So now, Steve, I'm sure you have some notes for this scene.
I do. Of course, there's the 33 thing. And yeah, that's all. That also ties into Wheel of Time also. The number 33 comes into my show, Wheel of Time. But let's focus here. Do you think that when the guy quoted that scripture that he knew that that the correlation between the 33 sheeps and chapter 13:33? Or is that just like a coincidence just for us watchers?
I think that, yeah, it's interesting because he is the one that says, I found 33 sheep.
Right. That's why I was
wondering. It just happens to be Mark 13:33. But, I mean, we didn't see him say, oh, so many 33s. So
we did not.
I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
That he's not making that connection. But we are making that connection.
Sure.
Probably, because 33 has come up already at least once.
Right. Remind us when. Remind me when.
Good question. Well, between 2019 and 1986, I think there was one other. I don't remember. Yeah.
Sorry, yes.
33 years. But I think at least once the number. Yana. Yana tells Ulrich 33 years ago. And then Ulrich tells Charlotte 33 years ago. So part of the investigation is Ulrich is quoting facts he learned from his mom. Stellar detective work there, Ulrich.
Well, like another thing, the only other note I had for this was the new priest in town. And that's something I underlined because maybe because I've been watching like certain shows with Heather, like most recently, like the David Koresh thing. It's like when people start idolizing the priest, and that's the reason that they're going to church, not necessarily for religion, but because they want to see the priest or the preacher. That can be a little something, to watch out for.
Yeah.
That's the only correlation I wanted to make was that I don't know anything about this priest, but I know that, I hope this fella here is not just taking the priest at his word at every turn.
Yeah. Cults of personality kind of stuff. But especially because if there's a missing kid and a new priest has come to town.
I didn't make that connection. But we know the church has always been wonderful with children.
But also, it is sort of interesting, the connection. We're in the dark ways. So with 1899, I was also thinking about Angel and being the wolf and the sheep. And you're a wolf and I'm a sheep. And also the quotes and having a priest, so it's just
wow.
These guys love their repeat performances, right? These things keep coming back, but it's part of this investigation. Plus, this was another cool cut we had here because we were looking at the no future, and it cuts to he says, I found the sheep like this. Boom. There's this like dead sheep lying down everywhere. It's very powerful visually how they do that. And then there's that bass boom sound they make that, we're going from no future to these dead sheep.
The sheep have no future either. Not these.
So Claudia comes into the workplace, and her assistant tells her that Trant Nielsen from the newspaper is waiting for her.
Okay.
And she gives Claudia some reports that are confusing to Claudia.
Sure.
And we know the name Trant Nielsen from the 2019 timeline.
Right.
This is Ulrich's dad.
Yeah, the same guy that went like for the search and he had blood on his sleeve and
He had
all
blood
that
on the
stuff.
sleeve, sneaking into the house, terrible liar.
And he's still sneaking around here, obviously. He's
Yeah. So she walks in where Trant is waiting, and we learn they're having an affair. Now, last week, Steve, you speculated that Trant was having an affair, and we find out, yes, he has been having an affair with Claudia.
I was completely joking. I was just basing that on the fact that he was leaving in the middle of the night in 2019, and he's this old man saying he's going to the gas station to get rope or something. So, you know, I was just completely kidding. But yeah, when I saw this happening, I was like, wait, Claudia's not Hannah's mom, is she? And I looked at some last names. I was like, nope, okay. So we're safe. It was just a funny joke. It wasn't any kind of spoiler.
And he sort of begs and pleads to see her tonight because it's very sad at home where Yana's just so sad, and so he needs a break from that environment. And no nonsense, Claudia just says, maybe.
It's a total callback to like the Ulrich Hannah situation. Like Ulrich is, I mean, Hannah's, Ulrich is all like, you're going to be at the meeting tonight? I want to see you at the meeting tonight. She's all like, maybe, you know, and she's, you know, having a sad household. And I don't know. I think there's some direct correlations there. But yeah.
That's true.
Like,
although Hannah was more beguiling and flirtatious in her answers than Claudia.
Yes.
It was kind of, I mean, let's face it, guys. Claudia is a power woman here. I mean, she's like, maybe I will entertain your sexual advances. I'm wearing my red lipstick. I'm wearing my high heels. I am the boss. I am boss woman.
Yeah. Looking at those reports, not liking what she sees. You know, I mean, she means business. She's not just going through the motions. If she was just going through the motions, she would have just grabbed that report, tucked under her arm, been like, thank you. That lady was wearing some weird clothes. that army
Claudia?
green. No, the other lady that gave her the report.
Oh, yeah.
She's wearing that army
Her
green
outfit
thing
was-
with the red stripes or something on it.
Yes. It was very almost military / Star Trek. Yeah, it was pretty cool. It reminds me of sort of like almost like a uniform. Like everybody's going to wear their parachute pants and their almost like a space suit. Yeah, it was.
It's not the plant uniform, is it? For like the power plant employees?
We didn't see anybody else wearing it.
It was an odd choice,
yeah.
but she wore it. I was going to say she rocked it, but let's just say she wore it.
Yeah. That's another, and she was like kind of wanting Claudia, I think, she was trying to investigate or find out more what Claudia was seeing, and Claudia was just like, never mind, I'm moving on from you. So yeah.
And yes,
so Mikkel.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say it's probably not a great idea to, like, if you're cheating with somebody and y'all are married, don't show up at the person's workplace. Just a word of advice.
Wait, that's a repeat. That's a callback too.
Yeah.
Hannah did that,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
Guys,
I mean, he had a good cover.
Dark is teaching us life lessons, everybody. As you're watching the show, we are finding out many of the keys to success, and one of them is don't show up at your lover's
Workplace, yep.
Your secret lover's work.
Correct. Yep, that's all I had to interrupt you with.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. So Mikkel has now arrived at the police station. He went to the school to see if he could find his mom where she works. Now he's going to the police station because that's where Dad works.
Right. Makes sense to me.
Yeah. Mikkel is a very reasonable kid. He's going about this, he's not sitting down to cry.
Right.
Or just feel sorry for himself. He's like, I'm going to try to find help how I can, where the safe places I know to go. I've gone home, I've gone to the school, I've gone to the police station. He's being very reasonable.
Completely more reasonable than any kid that age probably would be.
Mm-hmm. Instead, he finds Egon Tiedemann, who seems to think that Ulrich is playing a joke on him because Mikkel is telling him he's Ulrich's son. And, Egon obviously has a history with Ulrich of some kind that we don't really have access to. But he thinks Ulrich's just kind of playing a joke on him. And he's going to go take care of it right now. So he's excited. Egon has never looked so alert and ready to go. You said before he was looking sort of sluggish. Wow, he is all ready now to go and harass Ulrich. When I first watched this show, and I am not changing my assessment of this, I still think it could be legitimate, but it seemed to me that Egon is sort of the type of policeman. There are some adults that seem to hate teenagers or think teenagers are sort of always problematic or just trouble.
Sure.
I'm from the library background. I was a teenage librarian. Sometimes, you hear your coworkers talking about how much trouble those teens are at the library and that they're always getting in trouble. Me being somebody that likes teenagers, that always really bothers me. Mm-hmm. So it one of my thoughts is that Egon just has sort of a prejudice. Now, he could hate Ulrich particularly more than anybody else, but I feel like he's the type, the way he comes across to me is that he's just like, teenagers are just trouble. So
I haven't seen him interact with any other teenagers, so I can't really base that right now. What I'm thinking is, I'll just go ahead and say it. What I'm thinking is that he's been investigating the case of Mads. So obviously he spent a lot of time in the Nielsen household, asking questions, gathering evidence. He's probably questioned Ulrich like multiple times, like searched Ulrich in Mads' room. So there's a history there with him. And Ulrich has probably always been kind of crappy with him and like expecting, Aegon to do his job and find his brother. So I think that Ulrich has like built up a lot of like nihilistic tendencies towards like authoritarian figures. And he's sad that his brother's gone and he just doesn't trust this man in particular. So he gives him a lot of heat. And so Egon obviously doesn't like that. He wants, he's a police officer. He wants order. And that's not Ulrich.
Yeah. Yeah. Ulrich is he's going to rebel against the system. So, yeah, it's two people diametrically opposed that are like arch nemeses, Ulrich and Egon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oil and water.
So Mikkel is sitting at Egon's desk and just solves a Rubik's Cube. No problem. We sort of knew he was a really smart kid already because of the magic tricks, but this scene always makes me laugh. It's like, I've tried solving a Rubik's Cube and it is not easy. My nephew has a Rubik's Cube that actually is 3x3 instead of 6x6, so I thought maybe that would be easier. It's not.
I was really into them in the 80s, obviously. I had the Rubik's Cube, the Rubik's Pyramid, the snake, all the different stuff. So I was really into it. And like, it's a pattern, that's all it is. It's a pattern. And once you figure out the pattern, you can do it. Geniuses can figure out the pattern really quickly. And I think that Mikkel is one of those types. Either he's played with he's could have played with them in 2019, I guess.
Yeah.
Probably not, though. Probably not, more than likely. Possibly. I think that scene was put there to show you that Mikkel figured it out really quickly, and that was the first time he's done so, and he's a bright kid.
So he dials his phone number and gets a wrong number message, and he's sort of rummaging around on the desk like you do.
Yeah.
Egon has left, and so he's going to look through all the papers and everything on the desk.
Why not?
And he finds a missing person report for Mads, and the photo of Ulrich and Mads that he might recognize from his house.
That's a big find right there, yeah.
And several newspaper clippings that verify that, yes, the date is really 1986, but also, it's information about the investigation with Mads. And Mikkel finds a lighter, sticks that in his pocket, and a representative from the hospital arrives. And who do you think it is, Steve? Who would they send?
I think it's that lovely, unattached woman that doesn't have anybody at home waiting for her. It'd be Inez.
Yeah. So she comes in to get Mikkel, and she is so good with him.
Yeah.
The way that she's completely opposite from what Yana did, right?
Yes. They're in different states of mind right now. Yeah.
Yes. But she's basically, she doesn't try to touch him or grab him. She lets him come to her and just says, we're going to take you to the hospital and you can tell me what your address is. And she's very soft-spoken and kind. And I would go with her too, Steve.
Yeah, it'd be hard not to because she seems so calm and even-keeled. So yeah, I would as well. I didn't have any notes for this scene either. I think...
Okay.
I don't know if I should or not. I don't think there was much to notice in that scene besides what you pointed out. The lighter, he probably shouldn't have stole that, but I'm glad he did because he needs it later.
Yeah. I was, I couldn't actually remember why he took the lighter. I was like, why would you take a lighter? But Mikkel doesn't seem like the kind of kid. I don't know. He doesn't seem like the kind of kid that would just steal things. So.
Right.
I don't know what he was thinking unless he was, he could have been thinking what will happen. But moving on from here.
Yeah.
Egon has arrived at the home of Trant and Jana Nielsen to confront Ulrich.
Right.
About this annoying trick that he thought was so funny. So he comes in the door, which is open. We've already said that the door is just left open. And he hears this rock and roll playing.
You rock and roll racket. Turn that garbage down.
Yeah. And this is a cool scene I had to watch several times because of all of the things they show us.
Correct.
So if you're a quick viewer, like obviously Steve is, you spot that No Future slogan on the wall, which looks a lot like the slogan on the asphalt, right?
Yes. And it's on the back of his jacket. We saw that in the last episode too.
Right. And you already pointed out that it's a line from the Sex Pistols song, God Save the Queen. Mm-hmm. And it's a slogan that was adopted by the whole punk rock movement. So not just Ulrich. So people who were into punk music were using this slogan. It was, like gnarly dude for certain.
Right. I mean, it was underground punk, but at the same time, it was completely above board, too, because, they played the Sex Pistols on FM radio all the time. It was a hit song. And that No Future chorus was like a regular refrain that you hear. I mean, it is punk, decidedly, but it's also, kind of mainstream punk, we would say. But our boy Ulrich here is into some more intense stuff. He's listening to some Creator, and this is like a brand new band at this time out of Germany. They just released this is just their second album they put out. And I remember when this album came out. It was a groundbreaking, thrash metal album. And this made me look at Ulrich in a different way. I looked at him and I was like, you're a Creator fan too. Ulrich, all is forgiven, buddy. I don't care what you did back in 2019. You're my best friend now.
Yeah, I can imagine seeing this scene for you and like even our buddy Nate. It would probably feel like, oh, okay, this is one of my people, sort of.
Absolutely, yes.
And the prejudice that can accompany that from people who just see it as Satan rock or whatever.
And then on the flip side of that, though, somebody who could see that and take comfort. Like I could take comfort in the fact that Ulrich is a metalhead. I'm like, oh, I can relate with that. Mm-hmm. Like I was saying, I was just kidding. Of course, all is forgiven. But I mean, it does kind of like play with your emotions a little bit too. It's like you don't want to hate him as much,
Yeah.
but you still have to remember that, oh, even though he likes some of the same stuff you like, he's still like a serial cheater and he's still, he's got his
Right.
issues. So got to keep
Yeah,
that in
and
mind.
all is not forgiven, Ulrich.
On second thought, Ulrich, maybe you got some work to do, buddy.
So a couple other things in the room I want to point out is a record album on display that's called Fist of Hebron Tabula Smaragdina. I don't know if you spotted that, Steve, but
I did not, no.
it's a record album, and this is a made-up record album. This band does not exist. This album does not exist.
Huh.
But Tabula Smaragdina is a symbol we are going to see a lot in Dark. And if you Google Tabula Smaragdina, you will see that it actually stands in English for what's called the Emerald Tablet.
Cool. Okay.
It's an elaborate symbol with like letters. It looks like letters and words underneath a flap. And this is, I just want people to be aware of this. It is in this album. It is on Ulrich's shelf. So look for the connections later on. We also have a collection of figurines sitting somewhere in the room. Mm-hmm. The figurines that Yana was leaving on the grave reminds us of that, and we see that one that she left on his grave is in the middle. So there's like 5 or 6 of these, I think what you called knockoff He-Man figurines that are there. And so these are very quick cuts. We aren't spending a long time on that, but we kind of see, okay, Ulrich and Mads shared a room.
Right.
That was Mads' side of the bed. It's his figurines. So Egon confronts Ulrich about the boy sent to the police station, and of course Ulrich is like, I don't know anything. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
He also picks on Egon for having alcohol in his breath.
I love that.
Egon really is interested in front of this record album. The fake record album is 2 things. There is a hoof and also a set of horns. Mm-hmm. So Egon picks up that hoof and, he's putting 2 and 2 together with the investigation with these sheep, Steve.
Yeah, he's trying to make some quick connections.
Also, obviously, Egon speaks excellent English because he was able to make out the lyrics of this very fast. So this was interesting to me that, like, I know it's a writing choice, but it's also like, okay, does Egon actually know the lyrics, or could you? Because I couldn't understand the lyrics to the song without looking it up.
I mean, I think they're trying to say that he picked out the lyrics that were playing as he walked in the room, because those were the lyrics that were playing as he walked in the room. But I don't think any normal person would be able to pick out those lyrics. So I think he's a closet creator fan as well, maybe. I don't know.
He's that good. His hearing is that good. But Egon quotes in English, "My only aim is to take many lives. The more, the better I feel."
It's like more evidence for him, basically. That's what he's
more evidence.
grasping at, is that like this is more reason to believe that Ulrich sucks in his mind.
Yeah, like
I should say not Ulrich sucks, but Ulrich is guilty of things. Let me clarify.
Right. Not only is Ulrich got horrible taste in music, but I'm interpreting for Egon. On Egon's perspective, not only does he have terrible taste in music, but he may be attacking sheep, killing sheep, and he may even be responsible for hurting his own brother because he's listening to this music about taking lives.
Sure. Doesn't Egon understand about, creativity and, creative freedom, and I don't know. I can't fault him for making these connections, but I can fault him for, drinking on the job and, getting in a teenager's face and walking in a house, without letting anybody know you're coming in. There's a lot of things he does wrong here.
We don't see him drinking, though.
Well, Ulrich confirms that he was drinking.
Ulrich says he smells it on his breath, but do we know if he did or not? I don't know.
I believe him, B. I don't know.
Yeah. But they might have ended up having a fight, but only they are interrupted by Yana, who is wanting to know if Egon has an update about Mads, and is that why you're here?
Yeah.
And we find out that the reason the door was left open is because Yana is hoping Mads will come home, and he didn't have his key.
I mean, that's heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. But it's reasonable. I can't blame her. That's probably what I would do as well. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's just a heartbreaking detail. Mm-hmm. My only other note for this whole scene, I mean, I guess I could go into more notes, but I really feel like, just based on what I'm seeing today, that Egon is kind of an inspiration to Ulrich in the reverse kind of way. Kind of like we're saying, hey, this show is telling you how not to act in your life. Maybe Egon is demonstrating to Ulrich how not to be a police officer. And so Mads was never found, obviously. So in Ulrich's mind, this is an inept officer. So maybe he grew up to want to become an officer based on, these, because he doesn't seem like the type of kid that would want to be a policeman when he grows up. But obviously that changes because he does. And I just wonder if that's because, he wants to right some wrongs that he sees in Winden.
Yeah. Does he think that Egon is doing such a terrible job that he gets inspired to be a policeman one day?
Speculation.
Yeah. Yeah, and he does. One of the things I did not put down is when Mikkel comes and shows up at the station, and Ulrich, Mikkel says, "My dad is the chief of police of Winden," and Egon is like, "He never will do that," So it's like irony.
Does he say that really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't catch that. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, because he says, he keeps saying, "Who's your dad?" And he's like, "Ulrich Nielsen." And he's like, "Now tell me who your parents are." He's like, "I'm Ulrich's son, and he's the chief of police." And Egon's like, "No, he's not, and he never will be."
Wrong, Egon.
So.
Time will be your enemy.
Yeah. So speaking of Mikkel, we're back at the hospital, and Mikkel is having a checkup by a doctor. The doctor wants to know his name because they need to fill it out for these intake forms. And, it could be that Mikkel is kind of tired of talking and doesn't want to say anything, but also he's been telling people his name and they aren't believing him.
Right.
And so he needs to come up with a new lie. He's not going to say Mikkel Nielsen anymore.
Yeah, he doesn't try to make up a name to his credit, but to the doctor's non-credit, I mean, doesn't seem like he really cares. The doctor just wants to, throw it back to Inez and let her deal with it.
Well, I think that's the kind of work that nurses do. They do the bandaging, and the doctor comes in and says what to do. The nurses are the one that actually does that work in most cases. But yeah, he is kind of like, I got a pager, I need to go.
He didn't seem like he cared, I guess was my point. It seems like Inez cares and he does not. That's the takeaway I took from it anyway.
It could be. I did think the man was very doctor-esque. I mean, he was gentle. He was being gentle with his investigation. He was being gentle when he examined him. So I didn't see it as
okay.
But yeah. The doctor says, "Go ahead." Sorry, Steve.
I was just going to say I won't make the doctor my least favorite character this episode then. So he's forgiven.
Please don't. The doctor says he looks fine, and Inez is bandaging him up, and she keeps talking to him, and she gives him a comic book, and he tells her, "I'm from the future."
It's the truth.
These are the first words I believe he's spoken to her.
To her, yes. He's already talked to some other people, but to her, he hasn't said anything. He's telling the truth, buddy. He is from the future. I know it. I saw it.
But she sees the comic book she's given him.
Yeah.
It has an issue called Future Man. So she thinks, oh, he's just glomming onto that because, Yeah.
I wish that comic book was not there, because that did make her kind of like just dismiss his sentences as nothing. But
at least she doesn't say, "No, you're not." She doesn't try to change his mind either, which is a very wise adult. Adults, take note. This is how you deal with kids with elective mutism or
absolutely,
or kids that are in shock or seem to be traumatized. Just go with, she was happy he spoke words at all.
That's right.
So
just kindness. Yeah.
So now we're in the Winden power plant and in the office of Bernd Doppler, the current owner, and he's the one that's passing the torch to Claudia. Claudia comes in and gets on his case that the figures reported don't match the ones in her hands.
Right. Like, what are you handing me here? I don't like this.
Yeah. Yeah, she was getting on his case, and I think it kind of shows they have a pretty good working relationship, though, for her to just come in his office and immediately begin to ream him. She has no fear of speaking her mind plainly to him. So
she did address him by his first name when she came in, too. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I hear you. But he, as a boss does, he quickly dresses her down right back and starts talking about Chernobyl and how that tragedy has made everybody scared. And Claudia's just like, yeah, so what? And he tells her that she's not responsible for the whole town because most families have at least one member who's an employee here. So if something bad happens to the reputation of this power plant, you are putting this whole entire town at risk. And this is reminding me of, I believe it was episode 1 when we heard that report. We heard a report that the Winden power plant is one of the longest running power plants with no problems at all.
Right.
So,
at least not that the public knows about. Maybe that report shows something a little different there, and that's why Claudia is so upset about it.
Yeah, so what did you think about their interaction here and, his statement that basically he's letting her know that if she wants to be successful, she needs to conceal certain things and keep them close to her chest. What did you think of Bernd?
I wasn't quite sure what to take of him. Because he's a boss on the way out. There's obviously something that's not adding up in the books that he's handing over the power plant to Claudia now, and now that's a problem that she has to deal with. So yeah, I don't love that that perspective of being like someone in charge of a plant and basically in charge of the whole town. He's aware of this, and there's something that's not looking right in their reports. So that makes me a little cautious of the guy. And I never really saw him smile or do anything that really, besides, he's got pictures of his family right there. That's cool, I guess. But I didn't really see anything that made me, made me reach out to the guy. I just basically saw a powerful figure of a plant that may not be as safe as it seems. I don't know. Did I miss anything? What are your impressions of Bernd?
Well, maybe we'll wait till we see him the second time
Okay.
to kind of go there.
Yeah, we see him
'Cause it's
again.
coming up. So Egon watches as a man performs an autopsy on a sheep.
Right.
Now I will tell you plainly, Steve, when I saw this scene, my thought was, oh, this is the perfect, Steve likes those for, so maybe this guy will win the best character. It's not the same optician, but it's a second optician who's equally as entertaining as the first one.
This guy is entertaining. Like that other autopsy reporter in the second episode, there wasn't a lot of good competition. That's why she came to the top, because I wasn't really seeing any like characters like at that time that I was like loving. So it was kind of an easy win for her. This guy definitely wins some. I don't know what you would call it. He's definitely an interesting fellow. He has an interesting look about him, and he listens to some interesting music as he does his autopsies.
Did you recognize this song?
Absolutely, I recognized it, yes.
Okay, what was it? Because I don't have it in my notes.
Oh, The Look of Love by ABC.
Okay,
The band's
Love.
the band's called ABC. The song's called Look of Love, and I love the way like it breaks down to the bridge with that real like pensive violin chorus right at the same time that he's like, wait a second, look at this. And he shows him like the ruptured eardrum, like right as the music comes to that weird, like strange bridge part. And I thought that was such a good pairing. And okay.
That's great. Now, before we discuss this scene more, I wanted to say, when the scene when Egon is typing his report where it's like 33 missing sheep, he's also listening to a song, and I meant to look up who that one was, and I wondered if it was Nino D'Angelo, because it comes right after when Hannah talks about, oh, Nino D'Angelo is much better than Falco, and Egon was listening to this really poppy sounding song in his office, which cracked me up. I was like, this doesn't seem like his type of music at all.
I didn't recognize that song, but yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And he was a terrible typer as well.
Yes. I was like, what is he writing? Sheridan Prodden? Or, but it was 33 missing sheep. But he's doing this autopsy on the sheep and just sawing into the sheep's brain and they're talking about the investigation. So it's very professional.
Yeah.
But this scene actually makes me laugh a lot because Egon is like, so do you know any Satanists or any of these sheep missing a hoof?
Yeah, to this guy's credit, he just like throws it out the window. He's like, no, dude, no. What are you talking about?
Yeah. But it was... So a lot of this is kind of amusing, watching this happen, while at the same time, Egon is still trying to find a way to make sure that he can pin it on Ulrich. But we do get that sort of creepy detail that the sheep's eardrums were ruptured,
right?
Which really recalls that otoconia stuff from the previous, autopsy.
I wonder about those birds that fell too. If we were to look at those birds' eardrums, if they would have the same thing going on there that caused their demise.
I bet Charlotte will find out.
Yep, she's
if
the
anybody's
one.
going to find out, it's Charlotte.
Yep, she's got some cadavers that she can check out.
But I did also, this scene ends with the man reminding Egon of the party and the Yugoslavian meatballs, the spicy Yugoslavian meatballs that his wife is cooking. So I did, just out of mere curiosity, Steve, look up what makes them spicy. Yugoslavian meatballs are spiced with a lot of paprika as well as Worcester sauce. So it's basically meatballs with paprika. I like paprika.
Yeah, it doesn't sound bad at all. That sounds normal.
It did make me wonder what sort of meat they would be
That was
using.
my next question for you. Did you know that? Are they using ground beef that they get from Food Lion, or are they...
I found a recipe, but I was really looking for what was making it spicy. I didn't look at the meat and the recipe.
Oh well,
But yeah,
maybe for next time we'll get that recipe from his wife.
So back at the power plant, Claudia and Bernd arrive at this fenced area, and I think we noticed, you could see before that Bernd was in a wheelchair, but we see it clearly now because she's pushing him to this fenced area. And this is where he says the quote, "What we know is a drop, what we don't know, an ocean." And Claudia goes on alone and enters the underground cave. Now, so far we've seen people enter the caves through this one spot. And this is a completely different spot. The backdoor cave entrance, I don't know, but you have to rappel down a rope to get there.
So obviously Burnt can't go down there.
But he did at one point, obviously.
One point, yeah. And, so I guess that tells us he wasn't always in that wheelchair. Little mystery, maybe why he is in that wheelchair. Could have something to do with that. Maybe he was spelunking in his heels and he fell and ruptured his spine. I don't know. But yeah, she is in heels as she is spelunking down. That is interesting.
I mean, maybe Ulrich needs to take some safety tips from Claudia because she's doing much better in her investigation than he did. But she climbs down the rope, and she is not dressed for this at all, but there you go. Claudia gets it done.
Yes, she does.
She moves through the cavern until she finds this wall of bright yellow barrels marked with the radiation symbol.
Yes.
Now, we could make a lot of thoughts out of this scene, but I will tell you my immediate thought, Steve, is we saw back in 2019, Alexander mentioned we need to move them. Is this the them? 33 years later, these were the barrels. Yeah, I don't know.
It could be. I mean, this probably is definitely what's in those reports that doesn't look right. What immediately went through my head was this should not be there in these caves, and that they're somehow like skirting some regulation by storing them here. Somehow they're saving money, or I don't know why they're doing it, if it's a monetary thing or if it's some other reason that they're saving this chemicals for. I thought maybe they were just skirting some regulations.
When you say these shouldn't be here, what can you say more about that? Because, what do you mean by that?
I mean, like, they're marked radioactive, so they shouldn't be like in a cave, like a unventilated cave, underground that's accessible only by rope. They should be properly stored, properly sealed. They don't look like they're properly stored to me whatsoever. Yeah. So I think, obviously it's not right what we're seeing. This is not just a part of the plant that's like, this is where we store our barrels, and over here is where we store the pens,
Well, I mean, I kind of, when I see these kinds of scenes in movies, honestly, I never know what to think.
Sure.
I don't know the regulations, but it seems to me that this cave is part of the power plant property. It's in a fenced area. There's a cave, you go down. Now, like you said, it's like whatever's there, since it's just a hole, if there's something there, it can just go into the environment. So that's got to be bad. But it's, I wondered if I was supposed to understand something that I didn't understand when they showed this, because not only is there a wall of barrels, which that doesn't seem safe, that they're all like, they're stacked up like Legos, but there was this noise, and I'm like, is that music, or is that like a noise coming from the barrels? Yeah. What do you think's in the barrels?
I assume radioactive waste, since it's like a power plant. Yeah. That's my first thought, is radioactive. I'm thinking like a normie here.
Radioactive waste.
I mean, I think this is the waste that they're supposed to spend like millions of dollars into properly sealing it away in a proper environment, not in a cave that's completely open that anybody could like climb a rope down into, and it's exposed to the air and everything else. That's not a place it should be. So, if not radioactive material, then what else is in there? Big piles of money, bodies, Eric with a K.
Eric, he needs a place to store all of that dope.
Maybe Mads in one of those barrels. I don't know. I know whatever it is, it ain't good. This is not a good thing that she's finding out here. This is not a good first day for her.
Yeah. Yeah. So, at the Tiedemann house, Regina arrives home from school to find the house empty. She listens to the answer machine and realizes that she's on her own for dinner. And she pulls up her sleeves, and we see that she cuts herself.
Yeah, that's a surprise. Not a good surprise. And I guess she's not really well looked after. Her mom, power plant, she's a great woman. She's there doing her thing. But it seemed like this was a normal thing for this girl to come home and nobody being there, and she's got to heat up some crap for dinner from the fridge. She's a lonely child here, and the cutting scars, that's also telling right there that
But I don't know whether she's suicidal or she's cutting herself. But either way, she's inflicting damage on herself.
And that, I remember that being a thing when I was in high school in the 80s. There were people that cut themselves, and they didn't try to commit suicide. They cut themselves shallowly just for
temporary release of
fixation,
sadness,
satisfaction, whatever. And that was a big problem in the 80s. I guess it's remained a problem, but I remember it being a prevalent problem.
So Egon drives to where the dead sheep were found and spots something on the ground. It's a dead bird, and then it begins raining dead birds. And the lights begin to flicker in different parts of the town, much like they did in episode 2. And Charlotte puts the dead bird in the freezer. Mikkel runs from the hospital to the caves. In another part of town, teenage Ulrich sits at the bus stop, and Hannah rides up on her bike. And the two of them chat, and she asks if he could have one thing different, what would it be? And he says, a world without Wyndon.
No future.
No future.
I have a lot of notes just for that little bit that you just read there. I don't know where to start. I'll let you start then.
Do you want... you can go ahead, because I don't know that I have so many notes.
Okay.
I have more things to say about the montage and all that later, but go ahead.
Well, first off, like I said before, this evening that these lights are flickering is the evening of November 5th, 1986. So the evening of November 4th, 2019, this same thing happened, the lights flickering. So that makes me wonder, in 1986, did the lights flicker on November 4th and then they flickered again tonight on November 5th? Or is this the first time that we're seeing the lights flicker in 1986?
Well, is it actually the same event? Because you said that November 4th is where the show begins, right?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
That's the day that
And the next day, episode 2 takes place 9 hours after. So it's actually actually November 5th.
Yes.
So, and this is November 5th. So it's 33 years, but at the same day, the lights are flickering, probably the same time. So I'm guessing in both time periods, the lights flickered at the same time. Right.
Okay. And that's pretty much why Mikkel is running back to the caves, because he's like, I need to get back to my time. He's already tried everywhere here in 1986. So I'm thinking that he's running back to the caves to go back to where he came from. Like he's thinking that'll happen.
Right. If I go back to the caves, I can find the portal back to my time.
Right. Something I don't understand. I understand the lights flickering. That makes perfect sense to me, especially with the cave and the way the cave connects the power plant with the other area. That makes perfect sense to me why the lights in the town would flicker. Doesn't make sense to me why the car lights would flicker and why the flashlights would flicker. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Now, the flashlights flickering, that was November 4th from the first night.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, okay.
And here we see Egon's flashlight flicker and his headlights flicker too.
So I guess it did happen both nights. I guess you're right. It must have happened November 4th, and then it happened again on November 5th. So Mikkel's thought is it's happening again. Like Helga said, it's happening again. So I can go back to the cave. Oh, this is the time when you can cross. Yeah.
Maybe
so is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
Or something else?
Yeah, I'm just asking for clarification because that's what it seemed like to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm guessing that the lights flickering is like, oh, it happened at this time and now it's happening again the next day.
Oh, but that doesn't address my original question, though. Why are flashlights and car lights flickering? I mean, I understand why the lights at the school and the hospital and stuff like that, but I don't understand the flashlights and the car lights flickering. I don't understand the correlation. Now, hopefully we'll see that later, but right now it just doesn't make sense to me how something unrelated to the power grid would be flickering.
Yeah, I mean, when I see this, I never know what to think either. Is it
okay?
Is it just in all fairness? Is it an electrical pulse or something? Is it something related to the power plant? Because those barrels are there, or and that it's all connected. Like everything's connected. So the lights flickering and the dead birds
audio
happen
vibrations
at the same time. Sheep dying. So there's, Is it when the chair is operating?
Huh. Yeah.
Like that chair, the murder chair?
Right. Absolutely. It's got to draw a lot of power, lots of cords coming out that thing. And it's probably connected to the power grid as well, like to the power plant. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, the chair. The chair.
The chair.
An easier question might be this. Is this meetup between Hannah and Ulrich planned? Or did she just happen to see Ulrich there and go sit with him?
I don't think it was planned. I don't think Ulrich is like, meet me at the bus stop.
Okay.
I think Hannah follows Ulrich a lot.
Just like in 2019 when she says, I love you to Ulrich, and Ulrich just says, you're beautiful. Here, it looks like she's all into Ulrich and she's giving him the eyes. And he's just kind of like, whatever, smoking his cigarette. He's friendly to her, but he's certainly not flirty with her by any means. Probably because he's, got his mind on Katerina and got his mind on the apocalypse and all other kind of stuff. Oh, yeah. He says something about the apocalypse here. And then he said something about the apocalypse in the first episode, too, when he says that all the muffins are gone. It must be the apocalypse. He says something about the bakery, like when he went to the bakery and how busy the bakery was. And he says, it must be the apocalypse.
Okay. Good catch.
But,
okay. That's your moment for this week. I mean, you can have more than one, but I was like, I missed that. I've never put those two things together. Because I'm always like, Ulrich, you scoundrel. With your croissants, but he actually says the apocalypse. Yeah, he says apocalypse here. I'm always just like, oh, Hannah, you're so obvious. But yeah, I mean, I think Hannah's just for him. She's a little kid, like compared to big bad teenage. When you're an older kid, you don't want to hang out with younger kids. You want to hang out with the older kids.
Yeah, it's true. Unless it's a cool younger kid like Mikkel. You want to hang out with him.
Jonas does.
Yeah,
Jonas
that's right.
Mikkel.
Ultimate fist bump.
Yeah. So did you want to have any other notes that you wanted to cover here?
Just as we go. Nothing back.
So during our musical interlude here, because we've reached our montage, we see parallel shots of characters from 1986 and 2019. And I'm sure I forgot some of them, but Inez looking at the wooden box and looking in the room to find Mikkel missing from the hospital. Trant and Yana, who are lying in bed in both time periods. And then Trant gets up sneaks out of the room.
As usual.
Typical him, yeah. Charlotte looking at the birds. Ulrich looking at his empty brother's bed in 1986 and his empty son's bed in 2019.
That was rough stuff, yeah.
Regina applying red lipstick.
Is that what she's doing?
Well, older Regina is giving herself a breast exam. Younger Regina is applying red lipstick, and she's doing her hair because her mother was telling her before, you need to work on your appearance and work on looking better and not being so ratty.
I didn't
And
catch.
Regina's not going to do that, but she does it when she's alone. She gets dolled up and puts on that red lipstick.
What I thought was happening there is obviously the older Regina was giving herself a breast exam. I thought the younger Regina was doing the exact same thing, except they weren't, showing her breast because she's younger. I thought that they were trying to show us that she's like a hypochondriac, that she's like always like giving herself breast exams, like afraid that she has a disease. That's what I thought it was trying to portray to us.
So I do think she... you can go back and look at it again, but if you focus on young Regina, her hair looks really nice.
Yes.
Like it's not in her face. She pulls it back. She puts on red lipstick, and I think she does open her robe, but she's probably, when you're that age, you look at your body. You're like, oh, I'm becoming a young woman. I'm becoming a teenager. So I think she's just noticing. Okay. She, enjoying her blossoming womanhood or whatever.
All right.
And then of course in 2019 Regina is afraid and giving herself a breast exam. So those are the dual images for her. Okay. Now the song that's playing is Familiar by Agnes Obel. And one other thing is Claudia is opening the package that Hel gives her and finds a copy of the book A Journey Through Time by H.G. Tannhaus. So the song Familiar is a really beautiful song, and it has so many tie-ins to the plot. And I have a quote here from Agnes Obel. She said that this is a song about a secret. I wanted to make some songs about secrets and also how great they can be, because I believe secrets can make things feel special. I know that for myself from when I make songs, but they can also be bad. This song is about a secret love. The secret grows, and it's so hard for the person who is in love with this other person or the person having the affair. And so we in our world we've seen some people having affairs, but we've also seen a lot of secrets. So I think this song is so perfect for this show and for this episode, showing the faces of our characters and just sort of in a way, each of them is keeping a secret of some kind. Right. Ulrich we know he's keeping a secret from having this affair with Hannah, but in this time period, he leaves Katerina again after she asked him not to have any secrets, and he leaves to go to the caves again to look for his son. Right. Regina obviously has this secret time at home that her mom has no idea about, and she's alone by herself. And Charlotte has her secret bird, in the freezer. But this song is this song is one of the songs that people who love this show remember the most. Okay. Is this scene in episode 3, and the lyrics are really powerful. So check that out sometime if you have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. They picked the greatest songs for these moods, and I loved it. And I guess, let's see, song-wise, I don't know if I have any notes for this. There's a couple songs coming up in the series that I know about that I connected with more, and we'll talk about them as we get to those episodes. This one is one, I guess I mean, I love the song, but it's not one that I kept with me outside of the show. That like I put it like in my regular playlist rotation, I guess. Because some of these songs I have put in my regular playlist. This just doesn't happen to be one of them. But it's a great choice, especially the opening track to the song is just like mood all over. The biggest note I have for this, because we're getting on almost 2 hours now. We do got to start wrapping up.
Yeah.
But this is a pretty important note. This book, A Journey Through Time by H.G. Tannenhouse, is not an actual book. It's a book just written for the show. And H.G. Tannenhouse, of course, makes you think about H.G. Wells. And of course, he's known for writing books about time travel. And of course, we're dealing with time travel here in a book called A Journey Through Time. All signs are pointing to, time traveling. And I guess that name choice, H.G. Tannenhouse, was deliberate, a nod to H.G. Wells. It had to be. Because like the publisher of this book is like Minotaur Publishing, which is like the Minotaurs from the Labyrinth. And
yep,
I don't know. I think this is a great fictional book, a fictional fiction book that they made to introduce to the show.
It is. And the man on the back of the book, we see him working on a machine that looks like the one in The Stranger Keeps in the Suitcase. And was also the man on the television set in the creepy blue room, the scientist that was giving the lecture.
Yeah, you're right. That's right.
H.G. Tannenhouse.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't make that connection. That's great.
Yeah. One more thing as part of the recap, and then we can get into any closing questions. The most heartbreaking thing, of course, is that Ulrich drives to the caves.
Right.
Arriving at the same time as Mikkel, and they are, Ulrich is obviously there looking for Mikkel, calling for him. Mikkel is calling for his dad, and we feel like the way that it's shot, we almost get the feeling they can hear each other at a distance, but in 33 years apart. And then they just have to leave because they can't find each other. And also, Mikkel gets really badly hurt again.
Yeah, this kid is getting banged up. The first thing I thought, and Heather verbalized this, it's funny that she said it and I was thinking it, was why does he have a golf club? Why does Ulrich carrying around a golf club? And it turns out that was just a crowbar to like try to pry that door open.
Yeah.
I do think, this scene right here, like I think is like the scene of the show. Like I would give this like the best scene of the show. And scenes like this basically are like what makes watching other television shows hard for me, because I love this scene so much and everything about it. And I can't go from watching this to like watching some like, Family Guy. It just doesn't work. I can't watch stupid shows because I like shows that do this kind of stuff to you. I have been in the situation. I haven't been in the situation. I feel like I've been in a situation where I've experienced things that have happened in the same place I'm at in the past. Like I feel like time can kind of hang on to like little tiny energy sources that can be trapped in a space. And what I'm seeing here is the father and the son, they can kind of hear each other. They do feel each other's energy there. They're frustrated that they can't actually tangibly do it. But, it seems to me that Mikkel did hear his dad banging, and that his dad did hear like a faint voice calling him from the past. And it's just beautiful the way it is. It's heartbreaking, it's beautiful, and I relate to it because it's what I always think about and wish for when I'm in old places, like, you know, places beyond time, like an old cavern that's been there for millions of years.
Yeah. It's really sad because we want them to find each other.
Oh, yeah. And I don't know who I feel sadder for. I mean, they're both I guess it's Mikkel because an adult, you know, like Mikkel has nowhere to go. Ulrich can go back home and lay down in his bed and be sad there. You know, Mikkel's got nowhere to go, and every place he's turned, he's come up empty. I think his best bet at this point would be go back to the hospital and talk to your friend Inez, Mikkel. That'd be my advice for you right now, my friend. And yeah, get those cuts bandaged up while you're there too, because yeah, he's getting really beat up. And now
whatever your leg that you possibly your leg that you broke too. I mean,
did he break his leg? I mean, I guess we don't know yet.
He might have sprained his ankle, but he seemed to be hard for him to walk. Yeah. So that's how it ends, and it ends there, and then we go see the weird scientist dude that were like,
They could have ended like in lots of different scenes here, because a lot of these scenes like just had a lot of weight to them, and the way they closed out, it just, you know, you feel a lot of weight with these scenes, in my opinion. Wonderful, start to end. I love it all. But Lindsay, I'm going to ask you first. Can we go into who we like and who we didn't like in this episode, so I can
character, sure.
Sure.
Sure. No, I was like, I should have thought about this before.
I can go first if you want.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Because I already have mine written down, so I've already pre-thought about this. Yeah, my number one character is not the autopsy guy. I'm sorry to say. I gave that honor to Inez this time around. Am I saying her name right? How should I say her name?
I don't know. I say Inez, but
okay. I used to know a girl named Inez, so that's easiest for me. Yeah, just the way she handled Mikkel, and the way she handled her friend and covered the shift, and everything just looks, you know. In this episode, you know, I don't like the Inez of 2019 so much. I don't know why, but it just doesn't seem like she's as friendly. But this Inez, absolutely, she wins for this episode, in my opinion.
Okay, so I think I'm going to give my number one character spot for this episode to Claudia Tiedemann.
Okay.
Because she is just a boss bitch. I mean, she's awesome. She just comes in and, I don't know, she's kind of that picture of working woman, right? You know, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she's stylish. She's smart. She can spelunk down a rope.
And they even showed us like a little bit of her being kind, you know, to Trant too.
Yes.
Because if it wasn't for that, we would have only seen her being kind of stern and kind of bossy. But when we see that little bit of her too, it kind of adds to her character that, you know, she's nice to the underlings.
Right? You mean Helg?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Helg. That's right. That's right. Yeah, Trant. I don't know about that situation. That's a different deal. I'm talking about the janitor.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So what about your villain of the episode? Yeah,
there really is no like big major villain, anybody that really pissed me off, but I didn't get the best vibes in the world from our police officer here. What did he say his name was?
Egon. Yeah.
Not necessarily that I hated him or anything, but it seems like he's a pretty clear front runner for most unpleasant person this episode. You're right about the way he does his job fine. He's really looking for clues. He's following leads. He's doing his thing, but he's drinking on the job. He's, you know, leaving Mikkel alone in the police station. Probably shouldn't do that. I don't know. Just kind of get the vibe. He's just kind of a mess.
Okay. I'm giving my bozo award, That's what I'm going to call her from now on, maybe.
Okay.
I'm going to give it to Katarina.
Katarina. Oh, okay. Yeah, she was kind of.
Yeah, because she was.
Can I change my answer?
Too late. No. I think you picked a good one, too, with Egon. But I don't know. I didn't like. I'm very protective of Mikkel, and I don't like the way that she pushed around a little kid.
Yeah. And she accused him of being on acid. That was a pretty funny one.
Just unnecessary stuff.
Oh, she said the F word too, like when she was talking about her principal. That wasn't too cool either.
Yep. She's shown herself to be all kinds of things in that scene.
Yeah. Yeah, solid choice, man. I've kind of forgotten about her.
That's Ulrich's dream woman.
I know, yeah, he's loving her. Wait, did she pick him up on the motorcycle or did he pick her up on the motorcycle? I forgot that part.
She brings the scooter or moped over his house.
Okay, yeah, so she's a cyclist. So that shows that she's even more of like a bad girl. She's riding a motorcycle around. I don't know. I'm grasping at straws.
Isn't that interesting that she became principal?
Yeah, she doesn't seem the principal type. Ulrich doesn't seem the police officer type. These are, I don't know. It's telling of their characters, I guess. I hope we see some, obviously we're going to see some big changes, and that's what we like to see in shows is characters change and morph and learn and grow.
Oh, I think they definitely will. I'm very interested to see how you'll feel about these characters.
Me too.
The further we go along.
Same here, because I have very scattered memories of the second half of season 2 and pretty much all of season 3 kind of befuddled me. Like I said, I got lost somewhere halfway through season 2 and never recovered, but I kept watching the show out of habit, even though I was very confused about what I was watching. So from our start here, it's going to be smooth sailing. I gotcha.
Yeah. I think the only thing I want to say, and we're running long, so we aren't going to talk about this too much, but I did tell Steve I was going to start talking more about colors as we go along.
Oh,
we didn't get to do a lot of that today, but we've got a lot of red in this episode, and so I'm actually wearing a red, my closest thing to a red shirt. I don't own a lot of red. But as we watch the show, we're going to follow these colors and see if we think they mean anything.
I think you did a good job of pointing those colors out. You pointed out the red lipstick, the red dress, the blue. The yellow is the most obvious colors that we're seeing. You mentioned the chair and the yellow raincoat, but you also mentioned the yellow cup. Something else yellow that I overlooked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with doing it by each episode will become more interesting, but. Yes. Hannah's wearing yellow and blue, so she wore a blue coat in the first episode. So I've noticed Hannah wears a lot of blue. So the blue is mainly the biggest thing. That's blue is the blue room, the creepy blue room.
Oh right,
yeah. We'll save a lot of that we'll save that more for future episodes.
And before anybody says anything like, hey, what's the big deal about colors? It's just a shirt. It's just a jacket. It's no big deal. You got to realize that these are planted for us to pick up and for us to analyze. This is like a fictional show. So these clues are put there for us to pick up. Nothing is random. We got to assume that. Like I see Lindsay in a red shirt and I don't think anything of it because we're in reality. But if this was like a fictionalized show, it would mean something. And we have to delve into these things. So I support you delving into these subjects.
Plus the show, remember the show is called Dark, and Wyndon is a very bleak and gray town. So these colors really stand out. And one thought you could have is, well, it just looks nice. It's pretty pictures. But this being a Bo and Yantya production, we know that everything has significance. So we want to just follow those colors and see if we can come up with any theories. And there's theories online if you want to start getting into those. But Steve and I are going to approach this on a clean slate as much as we can and come up with our own theories. Or maybe we'll find the same theory as somebody else, but we'll get to it in our own way.
I'll only counter with Don't look at other theories online. Just listen to me and Lindsay's theories. Only check out Sweet Child of Time and one of my stories. That's where you're going to find us.
You found the best. Why do you need the rest?
Exactly. Well, we got to wrap up. We've gone well over 2 hours now. But Lindsay, another great one. I can't wait to watch episode 4. I'm not going to do it now. It's too late at night to watch episode 4, but I will see you next week with episode 4, Lindsay. Hope you always find water and shade, Lindsay.
Steve, I hope you find water, shade, and some Yugoslavian meatballs.
Oh boy, I'm a vegetarian. Can you please make them with tofu instead?
Sure. We don't know what the meat is again, so it can be made of anything.
Well, it's got to be seitan or tofu, or it's not for me. Thank you, Lindsay. Until next week. Bye.
Bye.